starting chapter 4, which is all about how we can own a business, and different ways we can set up a company. Now, I just finished reviewing the rate of return assignment. Some of you forgot that it was due at midnight. Fear not. I'm giving everybody a chance to resubmit. If you did not get a perfect score on your rate of return, you may resubmit for full credit. Here's the places where people made mistakes. Some people didn't show me their work. They got the right answer, but I needed to see the calculations. Some people did not take their work out to 4 decimal places. Always take it out to 4 decimal places before you round it off. If you are having problems, hit me up. I will gladly meet with you, and if we can't come up with a time that works for both of us, I'll even extend the deadline to give you a chance to resubmit. My goal is that everybody gets a 10 out of 10 on that assignment, and I'll work with you to make sure that that happens because I want you to understand how that works. Now, our stock gain portfolios are due on the 9th. I will gladly look at early submissions for that stuff. Hopefully you're splitting up the workload. Somebody's monitoring the stocks. You've all submitted what stocks that you're monitoring. Hopefully you're starting to work together with that. Your handshake profile, you have till the 22nd, which is next Monday, to finish that up or at least get it started. I'll be getting a report from Career Services, and I'm going to give you 10 easy credits just for starting your own job search here in this class. And finally, before we get in for today, Wednesday is St. Patrick's Day. Does anybody remember what her middle name is? It's Patrick. So I really like this day. So if you wear a Hawaiian shirt or something green, I'm going to be doing both. I'm going to be wearing a green Hawaiian shirt. If you wear something in a nice seasonal kind of green, something that says St. Patrick's Day or a Hawaiian shirt, I'll give you a bonus point on the next test. So green or Hawaiian, if you get both. Oh, if you get a green Hawaiian shirt, I might even give you 2 bonus points on the next test for that. Who among you will accept the challenge? How many of you guys actually own a Hawaiian shirt, by the way? Oh, so we got some party people in here. Yeah, it's going to be a good day. We got to cover a couple of things that I did not cover in the chapter that I think is important. Guys, who knows what happened in 1929? We talk about 29 being a bad point in American history. What happened? The Great Depression, which started with the stock market crash in 1929. Guys, does anybody know how bad unemployment got during the Great Depression? I'll give you a hint. When we had the Great Recession, in 2008, the unemployment rate got up to 12 or 14%. It was way higher than the Great Depression. Anybody have a guess how high the unemployment rate was in 1929, 1930? Take a guess. 36%? Wasn't quite that bad, but it was close. Michael, that's a good guess. It was about 25%. What does that mean? That means 1 in 4 people who was trying to get a job could not get a job. That's bad. So what else came out of 1929? Well, we had organized crime picking up. We had the Great Depression. We had a bad time. A lot of this stuff was tied to the stock market crash, and so we had something called the Securities Act of 1933 and 34. What that meant is all of a sudden you could not have insider trading. We talked about insider trading before. Does anybody remember what that means? If we say we have insider trading, what does that mean? Yes?
Just like knowledge of what the company may or may not be doing, like news-wise, before it hits the stock market, so you can influence.
Exactly right. Let's say my friend Elizabeth back here has a company that's going public, and it's going to be really big. You're going to tell me all about it, right? It's a good stock. I should buy it, right? Yeah, so I bought it. She told me that she's on the inside. Well, if the SEC finds out that she told me this, and she's disclosing information, proprietary information, giving me an unfair advantage on the rest of you, that technically is what we refer to as insider trading, and that's what it banned. Then we got to the Sarbanes-Oxley Act of 2002. Why did that happen? Well, that happened because of the dot-com bubble. Guys, this will be a little bit of a twisty-turny road we're going to walk down today, but that hasn't stopped us before and won't stop us again. In the 1990s, most people, up until 1995, I know this is impossible to believe, did not have internet in their homes. Most people didn't have internet. A lot of people didn't even have computers because what do you need a computer for if you're not on the internet? Well, all of a sudden in the late 90s, things were going crazy. We had all these companies that were coming out and saying the internet's going to be the next big thing, and all these people dumped money into the markets, and hardly any of it came to fruition. And so we had the dot-com bust. Well, the end of the dot-com era was a little company called Enron. Has anybody ever heard of Enron? Oh, this is a case study in insider trading. what happened with Enron, they were a petroleum company, and all the people at the top of the company knew the company was going down like a sinking ship. So what did they do? All the guys at the top of the company sold off all their stock and made a bunch of money and devalued their own stock basically for everybody else who was counting on a pension or retirement, and they screwed everybody else to make themselves be okay. And that resulted in the Sarbanes-Oxley Act in 2002, and that meant there was increased regulation. And finally, we had the Dodd-Frank Act of 2010. What happened in 2008? Anybody remember? We talked about it a couple of times. Let's put it this way. We know as Americans, we have large sums of money we put into things. We put them into our cars, put them into our retirements. But what is our largest source of expenses and wealth for most of Americans? Yes, it is our home. Exactly right. So we typically owe lots of money on our homes. Well, what happened was banks, when they lend people money and people pay back with interest, because that's what you do with the bonds, they invest in the markets. Well, if you give a bunch of people loans who can't pay them back, the money dries up. So we ended up having a real problem in 2008 that led to the housing crisis, which led to a global economic meltdown. And there were people who knew it was happening. So Dodd-Frank in 2010 came out and basically said, if you know something is wrong and you're willing to stand up and say so, we'll give you government protection to make sure that you don't face consequences for trying to do the right thing. Here's what you see repeatedly, guys. Anytime the markets screw up because somebody gets corrupt or greedy, we get laws that come out and regulate. Whether it was the Securities Act of 33 and 34, Sarbanes-Oxley, or Dodd-Frank, all of these came out of people doing the wrong things. Sarbanes-Oxley is the most significant piece of legislation that you'll remember from the early 2000s. If we're talking about the housing crisis, we're talking Dodd-Frank. Those are the two I would remember if I were you. But I'm not you. Because you guys are young and cool and have good memories. You got more time ahead of you than behind you. You're not an old man looking at life in the rearview mirror saying, what should I have done differently? And sometimes you scratch your chin if you got a beard, because that's what you do when you get to my age. You grow your beard and you scratch it and you say, I wish I had made some different decisions. But you know what? We're here now. And I'm glad I'm here now, because one of the best decisions I made was getting out of bed and coming here with you guys today. So what markets, guys, handle the sale of new securities? Is it secondary, initial, primary, or auxiliary? New. It's not a beer, but it sounds like it. It's an initial market because we have what do we call the initial public offering? It's an IPO. And I also stole one of my later questions, by the way. Primary markets handle the sale of new securities. We have IPOs. I answered my own question there. The first offering of stock, corporation stock, is of course exactly right, initial public offering. Absolutely correct. IPO, non-IPA. An organization whose members can buy and sell securities on behalf of companies and individual investors. Is that a stock market, a stock exchange, an institutional investor, or an angel investor? What do you think, guys? It's an organization. What did you say? C. We said the C, and it's actually B. It's a stock exchange. That's okay. That's why we're reviewing. What is the world's largest stock exchange? Still today? It is New York. It's A. New York, New York. True or false? Companies who sell stock are legally required to pay dividends. That is false. Which of the following is not an advantage of a company issuing stock? Is it A, stockholders are owners of a firm and never have to be repaid their investment? There's no legal obligation to pay dividends. Issuing a stock can improve a firm's balance sheet since stock should be create no debt, or shareholders have voting rights, which is not an advantage to the company itself. D, you got it. Management doesn't like that because you can lose control of your company. True or false? Holders of preferred stock have significant voting power in company matters. That is false. Absolutely right. What do you get if you have preferred stock? What do you get first? You got it. Man, you're nailing this stuff. All right, the principle of a bond is what? Is it the face value, the interest rate, the payoff amount, or the value after interest? What is the principle? Take a shot in the dark. We got to guess for D, but it's actually A. It's the face value. So if you buy a $50 savings bond, its principal is $50. Which of the following is not an advantage of a company issuing bonds? And again, to the company. bond interest is tax deductible. Bonds are a temporary source of funding and eventually are repaid. Bonds can be repaid before the maturity date if they contain a call provision, or paying interest on bonds is a legal obligation, which is not an advantage to the company. What would nobody want to do? You got it. Nobody wants to pay interest, man. You want money back in your pocket. True or false? CAA/CCC and lower bonds are considered the junk bonds. Oh, it's tricky. What class is it really? It is BA/BB. All right, true or false? Convertible bonds permit bond issuers to pay off the principal before the maturity date. Think this one through. Is it convertible? Or is it another C word? Take a guess, guys. True or false? It is false, but does anybody know what the word is? It is callable. Very good. All right, the expected return on investment, usually over a period of 1 year. Is that rate of return, yield, liquidity, or payoff? We're talking about a period of 1 year. Take a guess, guys. No electric shocks will be given for wrong answers today, I promise. Well, I'm pretty sure anyway. We got a guess for A, it's actually B. Now, rate of return is technically not a wrong answer. But if we're talking about 1 year, we're talking about a yield. If you're interested in a yield, you're interested, what can I possibly make on this investment in a year? Yield is tied to the annual kind of setting there. The time you have to keep your money in the market for an investment for maximum profit is that rate of return, yield, liquidity, or duration. It is duration. Yes, it is. Not a Durango. That is an SUV made by Chrysler Group. It is duration. True or false? The bears are more likely to expect stock prices to rise. Is that true or false? That is false. A bear is a pessimist. Bulls are optimists, man. Bulls are not afraid of the red. They charge the red. Stocks that pay regular dividends and consistent price appreciation. There's penny stocks, blue chip stocks, income stocks, or deferred stocks. Which one is probably the right answer? I'm sorry? You said it's not preferred stock. That's the name of a cologne and a way you can buy stock. So we got a guess for B. If you had answered B or C, I probably would have said that's correct. Income stocks are tied to one specific thing, but blue chip is the best answer. Can anybody think of a company that they would classify as a blue chip company, by the way? I know one I think of. What's a company that almost always makes money? Amazon's a good one, very good. What's another company that begins with an A? Apple. Yeah, Apple's making money hand over fist. Very profitable company. All right. An organization that buys stocks and bonds and sells shares in those organizations. Is that a stockbroker, a mutual fund, an electronically traded fund, or a stock exchange? The organization itself, what do we call it? I'll give you a hint, retirement. Did I hear mutual? Good, because it's the right answer. Absolutely correct. Which of the following does Professor Tonkin call security sausage? Is it stockbroker, mutual fund, exchange traded fund, or stock exchange? Say that real loud. It is C. It's an exchange traded fund. It's important that you guys understand this too, by the way. So I'm going to use my illustration skills to show how this works. We got stocks in Amazon. We got stock in Pfizer. I don't know how to spell Pfizer, so I'm just going to say Pfizer. And we're going to say we have Ford. We know, for example, Pfizer is a little risky because it's a biotech stock. We know Amazon's a blue chip stock, and Ford's been all over the place. So our institutional investor buys shares in all of these and basically breaks them down in his meat grinder here into shares of delicious, properly grilled securities and exchange sausage. So basically, these are made up of all these other types of stocks, but we can buy single shares of them. And that's why we call exchange-traded funds security sausage. Well, we don't. Our text doesn't. I do. I like the analogy. Sales, which the company hasn't been paid for yet. Is that accounts payable? accounts receivable, inventory, or sunk cost? We got accounts receivable, and that's correct. True or false? Preferred stock is a less risky investment than a bond. That is false. Why is it false? Because you got the right answer. Exactly right. Exactly right. You got to pay a bond back. It's not bond, James Bond, but it's bond with interest. True or false? You know, we covered this very briefly, so I'll be interested to see if anybody gets this one. That's why we're covering it. Venture capital, think Shark Tank. True or false? Venture capital is considered to be equity financing. Is that true or false? It is true because somebody owns a share of your company. Like we go to Shark Tank, for example. Joe had this great idea for a new pizza oven. How quickly are we going to cook these pizzas? 5 minutes. 5 minutes, and they're going to be perfectly. Do you like thin or thin crust, by the way? Thick or thin? Thin. So it makes a perfect thin crust, almost like a cracker, almost like St. Louis style. And so he's got this great idea, and I want to share in this, but I'm going to give you the money to make this oven, but I want to make sure I own a 45% share of your company. I'm going to give you $6 million. Are you going to take it? 45%. I don't quite control your company, but I got a significant stake. So it's equity financing. It's not a loan. We have a shared fate. True or false? Short-term investments are called capital expenditures. Is that true or false? We covered this one a long time ago, like a week ago. What do you think, guys? You're allowed to use your notes if you got them. You're allowed to use them. What do you think? Take a guess. You got to guess for false because it's correct. It's long-term investments. And that is our review for Chapter 16 on securities. Before we get into the forms of business ownership, because I am feeling fired up today, I hope you are too, it is time for our first opportunity for a question or comment of the day. Who among you would like to say something or ask something or sing a verse of your favorite song? Who among you has a question or a comment? Otherwise, I may randomly call upon one of you to see how creative you're feeling today. Take a second for a sip of my delicious beverage. What would you like to ask? Yes, sir. I'm sorry. Oh, that's a really good one. Like to combine two animals. I think one of them has to be a platypus because that's already several animals anyway. It's like a platypus is proof that God has a sense of humor. So I think a platypus and an eagle. So we can have a flying duck-billed mammal that lays eggs and has poisonous claws and a beaver tail. So this thing will be able to fly around, dropping eggs on people, and will be able to actually hover while it built dams with its tail. What do you think? Well, all right. Well, hey, the knife cuts both ways. What do you combine? You have all class to think about that. That's how we're going to finish class today. We're going to see what you come up with. So, guys, I love these kind of questions, but we got to get into the forms of business ownership today, guys. There are lots of ways we can start businesses. We can be a sole proprietor. We can have a corporation. We can have partners. Guys, partnership is like marriage, and we're going to be talking a lot about the ways in which that's similar and why you should think about partnership like a marriage and marriage like a partnership because it all ties together. We're also going to talk about corporations. Who here could tell me, however, what is a business you would get involved in and one that, like you would never touch with a 10-foot pole? I'm going to walk around the room. We're going to randomly ask people, if you had $100,000 to invest in a business, what's a business you would invest in or a business that you wouldn't invest in? Who's going to be up first today? I think it's going to be Joe. What's a business you would or would not invest in?
I would invest in
Tesla. So we're talking about alternative energy and wireless charging and all the wonderful parts of fuelless cars. What's a business you would or would not invest in? You invest in Amazon. How about in terms of starting a business? Parker, what's a business you would put money into or a business you would never put money into?
I'd probably put money into something like Uber, but I probably wouldn't touch anything like retail right now.
Oh, retail is like cancer. It's terrible. It's a terrible place to be. And actually, it was a very crass comment I made. I don't mean to insult anybody who has cancer in their family, but it's a terrible, terrible place to put your money right now. Will, what's some place you would invest in or would not invest in?
You gotta invest in.
We're moving out of COVID, so it's a good time to get into the market while they're down. Guys, I would invest in a pizza place because most pizza places, they actually kind of make it unless the pizza's that bad. And even bad pizza's not that bad at 3 a.m. You have to screw up pretty bad and mess up a pizza place. I would not invest in typical brick and mortar retail right now. I can't really think of a good way to get into the mall or strip mall circuit because they're going the way of the dinosaur. However, people make mistakes all the time, guys, because we fail to see the future. What's the search engine that every one of you uses every day of your lives? Google. Raise your hand if you've used a Google product in the last hour of your life. Yeah, and by the time the day's done, we'll all have our hands up because we're all using Gmail. Do you guys know that that Yahoo passed on the opportunity to buy Google for about $5 billion? How would you like to be the person in that company who made that decision? You know, here's another good one, guys. Blockbuster had the opportunity to buy Netflix. And they passed on it and said, we'll start our own streaming service. So sometimes people make bad decisions in terms of what they feel they can do and what they can't do. Here's another great one, guys. I love this one. We all have iPhones right now. Raise your hand if you've got an iPhone. Raise your iPhone up in the air like you just don't care or something. Guys, do you know what was the biggest smartphone in the world in the year 2000? Your parents probably had one. Barack Obama loved his. It was BlackBerry. BlackBerry was started by a company called Research in Motion, RIM, and they owned the smartphone business until 2007 when the iPhone came out and stole their lunch. So do you know how much, in terms of total market share, what does BlackBerry have right now in terms of total global market share? Less than 1% is correct. You sound like you've taken that in an HR class or something. So the bottom line is, guys, that we are dealing with a really tremendous crash of typical retail. And what's exacerbated this in the last year of our lives? COVID-19. Absolutely correct. So we've got a situation now where all these struggling retailers were not ready to deal with what was coming. And 2020 was like a knockout blow for JCPenney and Sears and GameStop until the stock market went crazy. So what's driving this stuff, guys? Why are all these stores closing? Let me give you a great example of one that was closing even before the retail apocalypse of 2020. Toys R Us. Why did Toys R Us close? Kids don't play with toys anymore. It makes me sad, actually. It makes me sad when I think that a kid is not going to get the experience of walking through the aisle and seeing a G.I. Joe or Barbie doll or whatever. But that's something that the market did not anticipate. Why are some of these other stores closing? Because we've got online competition. We have people not going to the mall anymore. We're getting all these deserted malls across the country. So business is changing. Even restaurants are changing, guys. Guys, we're not going to do this as a breakout group. We're going to do this together. But I'm going to ask you to consider the following, guys. We're going to be showing you several businesses, and I want you to tell me how big these businesses should get. Would you take on partners in the businesses we're about to show you? Would you try to grow your company? Would you try to stay where you're at? Would you stay private, or would you issue public stock? What are your areas of risk, and how would you deal with them? Let's talk about this. We have Kawasaki motorcycles. So, guys, first of all, Kawasaki is a big Japanese brand. What is their area of risk? How many of you actually have a motorcycle license? So one person. Well, if you kept me, there's two people in the room. If I'd asked this question 15 years ago, we probably would have had 5, 6 people in the room who had motorcycle licenses. Fewer people are riding motorcycles. What else is a problem? How about in the Northeast? Why is it a problem selling motorcycles in this area? Yeah, because it snows 10 months out of the year, and you can't put studded tires on these things. That being said, if you're an industrial company making industrial products, are you going to probably have to exist on a large scale? Yeah, to make it profitable. So that's why it's a publicly traded company in Japan. It makes sense for them to be a conglomerate. By the way here, has anybody ever heard of the Yamaha Corporation? Yamaha makes motorcycles. They also make guitars and drums and computers and cars and transmissions. And Kawasaki makes all those things too. They're big conglomerates. Then we get into the weeds lawn care service. Is this something that we're going to grow huge in an area like this, or are we going to stay small? We're probably going to stay small. Because what's our risks for this business in this region?
Weather again.
Weather again. What do most people who own lawn care businesses do in the winter?
Plow.
They plow snow. Exactly right. Does it make sense for us to pull on multiple full-time partners? Probably not, because we have more mouths to feed that way, and we're probably never going to be a publicly traded company unless we're operating in a large urban area where everybody wants their grass cut. Then we get Smith Meyer's store. Why is Smith Meyer's so successful, by the way? Captive audience is exactly the answer. No offense to Smith Meyer's. How many of you have ever been in Smith Meyer's? It's a fine little grocery store. They've got a decent meat section, but they're never going to get any bigger than they are because they're going as far as they can. And what's their biggest challenge? What's their hardest time of the year? One of the least number of students likely to be here. You got it. Summer is like a ghost town up there. So we've got a store that can't get any bigger, a store that basically, if it tried to grow, would probably face a lot of competition. And if we get out of the town of Loretto, who are the competitors? You got Walmart, the biggest one in this region. You got Walmart, you got Giant Foods, you got Weiss. You got all these big competitors, and they probably would not be able to keep up unless they came up with a niche market. Then we have Frankie Francis Sports Management. This is a guy who wants to hook up people with agents. He's an agent. He wants to hook up people with good contracts. He wants to help St. Francis athletes get professional sports deals. He's going to have a network. Does it make sense for him to pull on multiple partners, or is he going to stay a sole proprietor? Yeah, he's probably going to stay a sole proprietor, and it's all about the relationships for this guy. I don't see a time when he's going to do anything other than possibly form an LLC, a limited liability corporation, because being a public corporation doesn't make any sense for him. And that's what we're talking about, guys. Different forms of business ownership are based on what your goals are and how big you want to get. If we went in the United States, there are more sole proprietors, one person owning a business, than any other kind of business. 72% according to our textbook, but they're only responsible for about 4% of total sales. Why is that? Because we got the little guy who runs the lawn care business. We have the weird professor who sells guitars in his spare time out of his basement. Those are the kinds of things we have. And the profits are about 15% total. So total sales 4%, 15% profits. Then we get into partnerships, and there's fewer of them. But you notice, for example, 10% of total businesses, we get more sales and more profits. We're up to 15 and 27. Corporations are the smallest part, percentage-wise, of the overall economy, but they account for about 80% of total sales. It's an economy of scale. If you're Walmart, if you're Ford Motor Company, if you're Lockheed Martin, you can last longer. A sole proprietorship sometimes only lives does not live past the person who started it. How many people in here are probably going to end up working in a family business or already do? Yeah, it's hard, isn't it? It's hard to keep a family business going where corporations are more perpetual. We're going to be talking about the differences between these two. So if you got a sole proprietorship, you have one person who basically is doing just about everything. So you might be putting in the long hours, you might be managing, you might be making decisions. Then you have a partnership where you got at least two people who are together. And then you get a corporation. Let's talk about what some of the advantages and disadvantages are. Let's say you're a sole proprietor and you start a business. Can somebody tell me one good thing about being a sole proprietor? What would be awesome about starting your own business and being the sole proprietor?
You have full control over it.
Full control?
So you make the money, you don't got to share it with anyone.
You don't have to share it with anybody. You can do what you want with your money. Absolutely correct. Are there other advantages? You make your own hours, you work for you, you can do what you want. So those are all good things. We got good things on this side of the room. Now we're going to this side of the room. What are the bad things about being a sole proprietor?
You assume all the risks.
It's on you. Everything is on you. And that means at the end of the day, it's 5 o'clock and you've been up since 5 a.m., but something still needs done. You're going to be doing it. I know plenty of people who have family businesses, for example, who don't see a lot of their family just because you got to put the hours in. That's part of the deal. So then we get into partnership. Well, what's a good thing about a partnership? We'll start over here. If we get into partnership, what's good about a partnership? We know what's good about sole proprietorship. What's good about more than one person in here? You guys over here. Somebody help me out. What's good about it? Yes, sir. Yeah, we can shoulder the load together for sure. What else can we have in a partnership? Anybody? Yes.
Different ideas that can lead to, possibly a better idea than just the one person have on their own.
So we got idea sharing, we got workload sharing, we have new ideas. What on this side of the room? Go ahead.
A lot of times partnerships, people only partner with other people when they're like familiar, especially on Shark Tank. Like if you know someone who's good in the retail industry, you want to partner with them if you're not too familiar with it, or like someone on the tech side of things, if you're not too familiar with that.
So we augment our weaknesses with other people's strengths. So, for example, one of the best things you can do, let's say, for example, you're an idea person, but you're not good at math. Well, you might want to find a partner who's really good at math who can make sure the books balance. Now, what's on this side of the room? What's a disadvantage of partnerships? We know all these good things about partnerships. What's a disadvantage? Anybody know? Yes.
I would say that it is also a disadvantage to have someone else who is very good at music. For example, if I think one way and my partner thinks other way, like it's hard to get to one point.
We can disagree. It comes down to we have a hard time getting consensus for sure. Are there other challenges? Well, here's the expression: breaking up is so hard to do. And it means, for example, when it isn't working anymore, you got to get that divorce between partners. All of a sudden, you're splitting assets and everything else. It can be hard. It's hard to get along with people sometimes. And then we get into corporations. Corporations mean essentially that we've created an entity that exists outside of the people. If we have a partnership, it's whoever's a partner. If we have a sole proprietorship, you are your business. A corporation has what we refer to as perpetuity. And again, they create the biggest amount of financial volume. So again, sole proprietorships, advantages here are that you can do it very easily. You have very little government regulation. You can control what you do. And as a proprietor, you don't get a lot of specialized taxes. You pay income tax, and depending how you incorporate, yeah, you might have some other taxes or regulations to deal with, but they're not excessive. It's pretty easy to start your own consulting firm, for example. The disadvantage of this is you have what we refer to as unlimited liability. What does that mean? Let's say, for example, I start a business. What kind of business am I going to start? Somebody tell me a business I should start. Help me out. My fallback is always Ken Tompkins Chicken Shack. Okay, we start Ken Tompkins Chicken Shack, and we're starting it up here beside the road. We're going to put it up right across in the garage, so when people are dropping off their cars in the morning, they're going to smell my fried chicken, and they're going to want some. So Ken Tompkins Chicken Shack is up there. Well, it's not working out. People just aren't coming. My marketing's terrible. Nobody's coming and eating my chicken, and all of a sudden, I owe everybody in the world money. What are they coming after? They're coming after my business. They're coming after my car. If I borrowed money against my house, they could take that as well. So I have what we refer to as unlimited liability. It can be very difficult as a sole investor to invest in Ken Tompkins Chicken Shack. I want you to be honest here. If I said, hey guys, I'm looking for investors, I have no experience in the fried chicken business, but I want to start my own fried chicken joint, and you guys have some disposable income, how many of you guys are actually going to invest in my business? I don't blame you. I wouldn't invest in my business either. So it's hard to get capital. Sometimes, for example, I don't have the expertise. I've never made a fried chicken sandwich in my life. I wouldn't want to eat my fried chicken sandwich, at least my first try. I might have a hard time finding people who want to work for me. Hey, I can pay you minimum wage. That's it. I'm going to put in tons of hours, and I'm going to destabilize my marriage, and my wife's going to get so sick of hearing fried chicken. Not only are they taking my car from me, she's kicking me out of the house. And finally, by the end of it, I'm left with nothing but an empty chicken shack and a little bit of leftover breading sitting by the side of the road across from a garage. That's a country song if I've ever heard one. So we're at a bad country song about Ken Tompkins Chicken Shack. Well, we start thinking about partnerships, by the way. What do we look for? We look for people who have better ideas than us. I say this every time I teach this class, but I really mean it. I think generally speaking, what makes for a successful business partner is not that different than what makes a successful partner in life. Generally speaking, people who have successful marriages don't marry people who are exactly like them. They marry somebody who complements their weaknesses and brings their strengths to the relationship. By the way, what is the number one source of fights in marriages? It is money all the time. We like to watch these romantic movies where people get together and have stars in their eyes and things line up and somebody makes it to the airport just before that person leaves forever. In reality, that happens for about this length of your marriage. The rest of the marriage is about things like, what are we getting on the grocery list? Did you pay the bill? Is the seat up again? Why can't you learn this? It's the practical stuff. And it's really the same thing in a business. You want somebody who is good at things you're not. You know what my wife's good at? My wife's good at cooking. My wife's good at making people feel good. Like, she's the empathetic, nice person. I'm kind of a smart ass. She's really good at making people comfortable. I'm good at making people very uncomfortable sometimes. That's why we complement each other. If we went into business with each other, I think we drive each other crazy, but we have a successful business because we respect each other's differences and strengths. So what are the advantages of partnership, guys? We're going to hit a couple more of these before we wrap it up for today. It's pretty easy to start a partnership. If you have two people together, if my wife came in here and made a pitch, not for Kent Tompkins Chicken Shack, but just for Tompkins Family Chicken Shack, you guys would be giving her money by the time she left here because she had you convinced. Because we have more people. We have different skills and expertise. We have more ability to do different things. And again, we're still not getting all that much in terms of special taxes. Well, in this partnership, we still have what we refer to as unlimited liability. Meaning, now we're both in this thing, and yes, they can still take our house. Oh, believe me, people who are in family business, sometimes the arguments that start during the workday don't end at the end of the workday. For you guys who are in family businesses, am I right? Am I right about that? Oh, I've seen it. And so the idea, the other part is, how do we share the profits? How do we break out what we're making? And finally, at the end of it, man, if you got to break up a partnership, it's ugly because a friendship can get lost, or a marriage, depending on how your company is set up. These are all disadvantages. So again, perfect partners, people who complement each other's strengths and weaknesses. I think people who have similar values, somebody who you respect, somebody who believes in the company the way that you do. And furthermore, you got to think this. Can you deal with somebody else having a substantial part of the decision-making power? You got to deal with that. By the way, guys, if you remember one thing from this class about this kind, I don't know why I had the current event in there. I think that's as far as I wanted to get today, so that's okay. If you remember one thing from this class, other than my rant about chicken shacks, it is this. In a marriage, you can be right or you can be happy. You can't always be both. If you remember that, you'll have a successful marriage. All right, well, here's the way we're going to take this. Because we have given some time for consideration on the combination of animals. What's it going to be? A gorilla and a turtle. So we're going to call it like a gorilla? Gorilla. Describe this animal. Oh, you all right? That's great. So you have all the strength of a gorilla, but all the armor of a turtle. All right. Here's the deal, guys. Because we are ending a little early today, I need one more good question, and we can call it a day. One more good question, call it a day. Who among you has a question? Yes, sir.
Do the markets ever get affected by holidays, like price-wise?
Absolutely. I mean, we think about, for example, after Christmas, the markets sometimes fall because activity goes down. That's a great time to buy stocks in things like toy companies, game companies, etc. And yeah, seasonally they can be very effective. That was an excellent question. All right, guys, have a wonderful day. I will see you on Wednesday. And hey, rate of return. If you didn't get a perfect score, resubmit.